Hi there, my name's Sherry Forsyth. I'm a peak performance coach and I'm doing a theme on happiness this month. So what I'm talking about in this video is, firstly, is happiness a skill and can it be taught, or is it something that is just genetic and we have what we have? And then I'm going to discuss the characters and the traits and the behaviors of people who are known to be happy. So let's just dive right in if you're happy with that. So the first question, is happiness a skill and can it be taught? The answer is absolutely yes. So that's the really good news. There's a professor at Harvard called Tal Ben-Shahar, and his Harvard class is always chock-a-block full of students. If happiness couldn't be taught, possibly his classes would be empty. So these are very clever people who are knowing that happiness, in fact, can be taught. So there are just a few points I want to speak about before I go into the characteristics and habits of happy people. The first thing that we need to know is happiness has a lot to do with your long-term behavior. So in other words, if you are committed to doing certain habits, having certain ways of thinking, that is more likely to bring happiness than a once-off achievement of maybe a material possession. So it's a commitment to that long-term process that is absolutely vital in determining your happiness. The second thing I want to speak about is called the set point of happiness. I'd like to compare it to your body. Okay, our body is homeostatic. In other words, it has a certain level, let's say, of hydration. And our body will maybe be slightly overhydrated, slightly underhydrated, but it will always come back to that homeostatic balance. Now, that is what the set point of happiness is talking about. We have the set point of happiness, and we can be slightly happier and slightly unhappy, but we will always come back to that set point of happiness, which is genetic. Now, the big question is, can that set point of happiness be improved or not? And once again, the answer is yes, it can be. There have been studies done specifically regarding how gratitude, living in a life of gratitude, can increase that set point of happiness. And in fact, if you practice many of the habits that I'm going to be speaking about shortly, that will also help you to increase the point of happiness. So instead of it sitting here, it will sit there. So we will always return to a higher point of happiness. The other thing that is interesting is that our happiness has everything to do with our perspective on life, how we see things, rather than the actual circumstances. So we all know that saying that it's not what happens to you, it's how you approach it and your attitude to it that is important. According to the long-term study at Harvard University by Robert Welding, they showed, as I've mentioned before, that one of the most important external causes of happiness is your relationships with other people. So that's your friends and your family. The other thing is we can choose to be happy, as I've mentioned before. Our daily habits, our daily resilience, our daily approach to life is what's going to make us happy. So I have a question for you. Does knowing that your happiness actually is in your hands, does that scare you? Or does it empower you? How exciting is it to know that we can actually increase our set point of happiness, in other words, our average happiness on a day-to-day basis? Okay, so we're going to discuss now the characteristics and traits and behaviors of people who are happy. Because why should we reinvent the wheel? Let's just use the research that is out there and then be able to apply it to ourselves. So the characteristics of happy people is kind of quite psychologically, scientifically based. So bear with me as I go through them and what they mean. The first thing is the people who are happy have the ability to have integration within their personality. In other words, it indicates a psychological maturity, and it allows you to think about things and move beyond behaviors that might be considered to be negative. In other words, our personalities are whole. Okay? The second point, the second characteristics of people who are happy is they have autonomy. In other words, they have the capacity to make a decision on their own. They don't rely on others. They can stand alone when they make that decision. The third thing is accurate perception. In other words, their view of the world is not skewed in any way. It's quite accurate and very realistic. The fourth is they have environmental mastery. In other words, they are able to cope well with their environment. They deal with it, they interact with it well, they set good and realistic goals, and they don't see their environment as threatening. The fifth thing is self-acceptance. Okay, they realize they are who they are, and they're quite good with that. Okay, they know what their strengths and weaknesses are and can act accordingly. And the last character that people have is self-actualization. Okay, so this is the need to grow, the need to be all that you can be. Okay, so those are the characteristics of happy people. Now I'm going to talk about the traits of happy people, and I'm going to just read through them and explain those that need to be explained. So many happy people, when they tested, there's a commonality in the traits, there's a commonality in the characteristics, and there's again a commonality in their behaviors. So these are the traits that people have. They are hopeful and possess an optimistic lifestyle. I don't have to explain that at all. They are consistently and automatically kind. They're positive. They are energetic and they have a zest for life. They are fervent practitioners of gratitude. As I mentioned before, that can increase the set point of happiness. They are intellectually curious. In other words, they're always wanting to grow and to learn. They have self-confidence. They are authentic. They're able to live in the present, but they plan for the future. So that gives them a sense of stability. They're very adaptable. So when change comes their way, they're not thrown by it. They have core values and they live according to those values. They are compassionate. They are cooperative. In other words, they work together with other people, not against them. They surround themselves with opportunities to love and be loved. And the last trait is they are resilient thinkers. Okay, so that gives you quite a lot to work with if you are trying to work towards your happiness. And I would recommend maybe get a pen and paper so that you can write down a few of these ideas as I now move on to the habits of happy people. Now, when I did the research, I ended up with probably, 500 different habits of happy people. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe it was 300. But what I did is, in the research, there were 12 that came up in most of the articles that I read. So I'm first going to mention these 12 habits, which were the most common in all the studies. And then I'm going to list up to the top 50. So it should give you a nice range. What I want you to do is just to take those that you think are important. And then if you need to think about them or find out more about how to be or live that habit, then obviously research is good. Or if you want to drop me a message on Facebook Messenger, that's wonderful. Or on email at sherryforsyth@gmail.com. And I'll do my best to help you. So these are the top 12 habits of happy people. The first one, as I've mentioned in the first video on happiness, is what makes us happy is when we give to others, when we help them, when we focus on serving, when we're able to actually give as much as we can. And linked to that, as I've mentioned, the neurochemistry, when we give and when we receive, is the same. So it's really good for our bodies. And I would like to put an addendum to that, that we need the balance of giving and receiving, so that we don't be one of those people that is giving so much that we get exhausted. Okay, so that's the first habit of people who are happy. The second one is people who are happy have the ability to live in the present moment. They can savor what's happening right here and right now. They can appreciate the pleasures that life has to offer without worrying about the future or living with regret of the past. Okay, so they live in the present. That's the second habit. The third one is happy people have spirituality. Okay, in some way, shape, or form. It can be a set religion, organized religion. It can be that you meditate. It can be that you're very mindful. But there needs to be a certain kind of spiritual practice that is required. I would also like to mention that these aren't in particular order at all as to which is the most important and which is the least important. All 12 of these are really good. Okay, the fourth one is they very carefully select who their friends are. They surround themselves with people who are building them, not breaking them down. They surround themselves with people who bring them joy and happiness, smiling and laughter. Okay, and that is underlined by the Harvard study by Robert Waldinger, the long-term study. The fifth one I found really interesting. People who are happy get enough sleep. You can imagine if you don't get enough sleep, then you can be a bit irritable. So one of the things they make sure they do is they get enough sleep every night. And it varies from person to person. Some people need the 8 hours of sleep a night. Some need a bit less. Some need a bit more. Find out what yours is and then make sure you get that sleep. The sixth thing that is the habit of people who are happy is that they spend time in nature. They get out, they go to the bush, they go to the sea, they spend time in their garden. They are outside. They're not cooped up indoors all the time. So they allow nature to do its positive and healing work. The seventh point is what we've spoken about. They choose to be happy. Okay, it's a deliberate choice that they make. And they make an effort to get to the place where they can consider they're happy. Okay, so it's a choice that they make. And I think that is really very relevant. The eighth habit of people who are happy is very close to my heart as a sports teacher myself, is exercise. Any way, shape or form, and my recommendation is always to do an exercise that you enjoy, because then you'll carry on doing it. If you don't enjoy the exercise, you will never do it long term. So if it's yoga, if it's Pilates, if it's running, if it's golf, if it's tennis, whatever you love to do, use that as your form of exercise. And it increases the endorphins and chemically helps you to be happier. Just leads to a more positive state of mind. The ninth habit is people who are happy have a deep connection to other people. So it kind of links in with number 4, where you need to select your friends and make sure that they are kind of the right people for you. But happy people actually make sure that they have that really deep connection. So it's not just a shallow acquaintance kind of relationship. It is a deep relationship. Okay. Number 10 habit is do the things that you love to do. If they are as far as your work is concerned, There might be hobbies that you might want to do, but in your spare time, make sure you do what you are loving to do. And it might seem weird for other people, but the important thing is that you enjoy doing it, and make sure you do that. The 11th habit for happy people is that they take responsibility for their lives. They're accountable, they don't blame, they don't make excuses. It is as it is. Okay? And the 12th one is that happy people find meaning and purpose both in work and in play. Okay, so those are the top 12 habits of happy people. And they're pretty easy for us to assimilate into our lives. Okay, I'm going to now mention the others. And once again, just take what you want from this list. I'm not going to do it in a huge amount of detail, but take what you want and see if you can implement this habit into your life so that you can also consciously choose happiness, consciously choose to work towards the happiness by embracing the habits of other happy people. So here they are. They don't hold on to grudges or negativity. In other words, they practice forgiveness. Big process. They're busy, but they're not rushed. Albert Einstein says a calm and modest life brings more happiness than a pursuit of success and constant restlessness. So, a very clever man is saying the same thing. Another habit is that they don't sweat the small stuff. They celebrate other people's successes. They're not envious or feel that they beat themselves up because they're not doing the same thing. They treat everyone, with respect and kindness. These are things we can all do. We can choose to do on a daily basis. And I really encourage you to try some of them and see what happens to your level of happiness. Next, they are optimistic and positive in their mindset. So in other words, the glass is always half full, not half empty. They're proactive about relationships. So in other words, they put time and effort into them. They express gratitude. They have a growth mindset. In other words, let's see what we can learn. Here's an important one. They spend their money on experiences, not on material things. So in other words, they make memories rather than collect things. They reward and take care of themselves. So in other words, they honor themselves. And self-compassion is a big part of this. Okay, they engage in deep and meaningful conversations, which links to deep and meaningful relationships. They hold on to their core values. They listen to their heart. In other words, their gut, their instinct. They open themselves to listening to that. They also are open to change. They're not frightened by it. They cultivate emotional resilience, which means they can withstand hardships when they come. They let themselves lose track of time. In other words, they get so engrossed in something that before they know it, 3 hours have passed. So that again links to do the things that you love to do. Okay, they value a really good mixtape. They in fact do their own one. In other words, what they're saying is that music is very restorative and very powerful. And it affects us, it can affect us deeply. For me, personally, music has been an amazing, soothing presence in my life. They unplug. In other words, they allow themselves to move away from the hustle bustle of life, the worriness of work, and they just relax. They just be. They are authentic. They don't have to pretend anything. They laugh out loud a lot. And in fact, added to that is, if you're wanting to be a bit happier, smile more. Okay? What happens is, if you smile to someone, I guarantee you they would smile back to you. Schedule some fun time. In other words, let's enjoy our life. Life isn't always just such a serious thing. Learn something new. Challenge yourself. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a university course. It can be a little online course that you spend 10 minutes a day on. But it's something that you want to learn how to do, and you do it. The next one is they know how to optimize their biochemistry. In other words, the neuroscience of happiness and all the chemistry that happens in our brains. They know about that, and they know how to maximize it. In other words, as Ian Weinberg, the neurosurgeon in Joburg, he speaks about being in the green zone. In other words, the positive, happy zone, and it makes us healthier as well. The next one is that they plugged into their soul. So not only do they open their heart, and not only are they open to change, they listen to their soul. They're aware of their deepest desires. They strengthen their closest relationships. So once again, it's an active thing. It pays off if you spend time and effort investing in those relationships that are closest to you, friends and family. They work on trying to make sure that they are emotionally healthy as a person, as well as physically healthy. Okay? Emotionally and physically healthy will make us happier. They lower their expectations and their aspirations, which doesn't mean that they're going to live without challenge, but just they might not challenge and drive themselves as much, which can often lead to disappointment when you don't achieve that. So if you have slightly lower expectations, you're more likely to achieve them. So this is one thing that we can do quite easily, is just dial back our expectations a little bit and make sure that we are happier. The next one is that they actually value happiness. So it's like when you choose to be happy and you work towards it, they value it. For them, it's an important part of living. And who wouldn't want to be happy? The next one is to be a better friend than you are right now. Invest some time and some special conversations with those people in your life that mean a lot to you. Other habits that happy people have is they live life with integrity. They practice non-judgment. And these next two are a little bit light-hearted. They pet their animals and spend time with them. And also they get up and dance. So in other words, they show their joy in living. The last two habits of happy people is that they are proactive about creating the life that they want, the life that will bring them happiness. And the last habit is to hold on to the good and let go of the bad. So I hope this video has been helpful to you in trying to work out what you need to do to enhance your own happiness. I hope that you found it valuable, and as always, I thank you so much for your time.